The lake was still, a mirror of the Montana sky, but my heart churned like a storm ready to break. I'd come to Lake McDonald to escape. Escape the weight of my own thoughts, the whispers of a town that didn't understand me, and the ache of a life I hadn't dared to live. At 28, Jamal Carter, was drowning in the silence of who I was supposed to be. I cast my fishing line into the glassy water, the soft plink of the lure the only sound breaking the dusk. The world felt heavy, my job at the hardware store, my mom's endless questions about when I'd settle down, and the secret I'd buried so deep it clawed at my chest. I was queer in a place where that word felt like a loaded gun, and I'd spent years dodging its trigger. Fishing was my reset, my way to quiet the noise. But tonight, the quiet wasn't enough. Headlights sliced through the twilight, and my stomach dropped. A sheriff's SUV rolled up the gravel path, dust swirling like my thoughts. I wasn't doing anything wrong, just a black man fishing at dusk. But in a small town like Whitefish, that was enough to draw eyes. I reeled in my line, slow and deliberate, keeping my movements calm. The vehicle stopped, and the door swung open. Out stepped a man who didn't fit the image of the gruff, middle-aged sheriffs I'd grown accustomed to. He was maybe 30, Latino, with a strong jaw shadowed by stubble and eyes that seemed to carry their own story. His uniform was crisp, but his posture was relaxed, almost hesitant. "Evening," he called, his voice warm but laced with authority. "Mind if I ask what you're doing out here?" I forced a smile, my hands steady on the rod. "Just fishing, Sheriff." Clearing my head. He nodded, stepping closer, his boots crunching on the gravel. "Fair enough. I'm Mateo Alvarez, by the way. New to the county." He extended a hand, and I hesitated before shaking it. His grip was firm, his skin warm against the evening chill. For a moment, our eyes locked, and something unspoken passed between us. A flicker, like a spark in dry grass. "Jamal Carter," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You always check on folks fishing alone?" Mateo chuckled, a low, easy sound. "Only when they're out here looking like they're carrying the world on their shoulders." He leaned against the dock's railing, glancing at the lake. "This place is good for that, though." Thinking. I didn't know why, but his words hit deeper than they should have. Maybe it was the way he said it, like he'd been out here himself, wrestling with something too big to name. I turned back to the water, casting my line again. "Yeah, it's quiet. Usually." He didn't leave. Instead, he stood there, watching the ripples spread across the lake. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was alive, charged with something I couldn't place. "You from around here?" he asked after a moment. "Born and raised," I said, keeping my eyes on the water. "You moved up from Albuquerque a month ago. Thought I'd try somewhere new. Smaller." He paused, then added, "Didn't expect it to feel this heavy." I glanced at him, surprised by the honesty in his voice. "Heavy how?" He shrugged, but his eyes were distant. "New place, new rules. People look at you like they're trying to figure out where you fit. Or if you do." I knew that feeling too well. Being black in Whitefish was its own kind of weight, and being queer on top of that, it was like carrying a boulder no one else could see. I wanted to ask him what he meant, what kind of heavy he was carrying, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead I said, "Yeah, this town's got a way of making you feel like you're always on trial." Mateo's gaze flicked to me, sharp and searching. "You ever think about leaving?" "Every damn day," I admitted, surprising myself. I'd never said that out loud, not to anyone. Not to my mom. Not to my best friend, Lena, who'd left for Seattle years ago. But something about Mateo, maybe his quiet intensity, maybe the way he seemed to see me, loosened the truth. "So why stay?" he asked, not judging, just curious. I looked at the lake, its surface catching the last of the sunlight. Family, habit, fear, maybe. I laughed, but it was hollow. "You?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he picked up a flat stone and skipped it across the water, watching it bounce before it sank. "I thought moving here would be a fresh start, but you can't outrun yourself, you know?" His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning I didn't fully grasp yet. I wanted to ask more, to dig into whatever he was carrying, but the moment felt fragile, like a bubble that might burst if I pushed too hard. So I nodded, casting my line again. "Yeah, I know." We stood there, the lake stretching out before us, the world quiet except for the soft lapping of water against the dock. I didn't know it then, but that moment, the spark in his eyes, the weight of his words, was the start of something that would unravel everything I thought I knew about myself. The next morning, I woke up with Mateo's face stuck in my head. Those dark eyes, that half smile. He'd lingered by the lake for nearly an hour, talking about nothing and everything. The way the stars looked different in Montana than in New Mexico. The best spots to grab coffee in town. The way small towns could feel like a hug and a chokehold all at once. When he finally drove off, I'd felt a pang, like I'd lost something I hadn't even known I wanted. I tried to shake it off, focusing on the monotony of the hardware store. The smell of sawdust and metal, the hum of fluorescent lights, the same customers asking for the same nails and paint. But my mind kept drifting back to the lake, to Mateo's voice, to the way he'd looked at me like he saw more than I wanted him to. Around noon, the bell above the door chimed, and there he was. No uniform this time, just jeans, a flannel shirt, and that same easy confidence. My heart did a stupid flip, and I busied myself with restocking screws, pretending I hadn't noticed him. "Jamal," he said, his voice cutting through the store's quiet. "Got a minute?" I straightened, wiping my hands on my apron. "Depends. You here to arrest me or buy something?" He grinned, leaning against the counter. "Neither. Thought I'd see if you're free later. There's a diner on Main Street. Best burgers in town, they say." I froze. Was he asking me out? Or was this just a friendly thing? My pulse raced, and I hated how much I wanted it to be the former. "You asking everyone you meet to dinner, Sheriff?" "Just the ones who look like they need a break," he said, his eyes holding mine. "So? You in?" I should have said no. I should have remembered where I was, who I was, the risks of letting myself want something I'd spent years denying. But his smile was like sunlight breaking through clouds, and I was tired of hiding in the shadows. "Yeah," I said, my voice barely steady. "I'm in." The diner was a slice of Americana. Red vinyl booths, checkered floors, and the smell of frying onions. I slid into a booth across from Mateo, my nerves buzzing like a live wire. He looked different in the soft glow of the diner's lights. His flannel sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms, a small scar curving along his wrist. I wanted to ask about him, but I kept my hands wrapped around my coffee mug instead, anchoring myself. "So," Mateo started, leaning back with a casual ease that made my chest tighten. "You gonna tell me what's got you out at that lake, looking like you're solving the world's problems?" I laughed, but it came out sharp. "Just life, man. You know how it is." His eyes narrowed slightly, not accusing, just seeing. "I know a little, but I'm guessing there's more to it than that." I sipped my coffee, buying time. How do you tell someone you barely know that you're tired of pretending? That you're queer in a town where the word faggot still gets thrown around like it's nothing? That you've spent years building walls so high you're not sure how to climb over them? I didn't say any of that. Instead, I shrugged. Small towns, they get under your skin. Mateo nodded like he understood more than I'd said. Albuquerque wasn't exactly a paradise for me either. I left because, well, let's just say I needed to figure out who I was without everyone else's expectations. My heart stuttered. Was he saying what I thought he was? I wanted to ask, but fear clamped my mouth shut. I'd spent too long hiding to trust that kind of openness. So I deflected. And you picked whitefish? Bold move. He chuckled, but there was a shadow in it. Thought it'd be simpler, quieter. Turns out, quiet doesn't fix everything. The waitress dropped off our burgers, breaking the tension. We ate, talked about lighter things, his love for old country music, my knack for fixing anything with a wrench. But every laugh, every glance, felt like a step toward something dangerous and exhilarating. I caught myself watching the way his hands moved, the way his smile softened when he talked about his mom's cooking. It was too much, too fast, and I didn't know how to stop it. When we stepped outside, the night air was crisp, the stars sharp overhead. Mateo paused by his truck, hands in his pockets. You ever feel like you're waiting for something, but you don't know what it is? I swallowed hard, my pulse loud in my ears. Yeah, all the time. He looked at me then, really looked, and I felt exposed, like he could see every secret I'd ever kept. Maybe you're not waiting anymore, he said softly, and my world tilted. The next few weeks were a blur of stolen moments. A coffee here, a walk by the lake there. Mateo had a way of making the world feel bigger, like there was space for me to breathe, to be. But every time I let myself sink into that feeling, guilt followed. Whitefish wasn't a place where two men could just be. Not like that. Not without whispers, stares, or worse. One evening, we were back at the lake, sitting on the dock with our feet dangling over the water. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Mateo was quieter than usual, his shoulders tense. You okay? I asked, nudging his arm. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Got a call today. Some folks in town aren't thrilled about the new sheriff. Said I'm not what they expected. My stomach twisted. I knew what that meant. I'd heard it my whole life. Code for you don't belong. What did you say? Told them I'm here to do my job, not win a popularity contest. He smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. Still stings, though. I wanted to reach for him, to tell him he wasn't alone, but my hands stayed glued to the dock. You don't have to prove anything to them, I said instead. You're good at what you do. They'll see it. He turned to me, his gaze soft but piercing. And what about you, Jamal? What are you trying to prove? The question hit like a punch. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. He was right. I'd been proving I could survive, proving I could blend in, proving I didn't need anyone. But sitting there, with him so close I could feel the warmth of his shoulder, I didn't want to prove anything anymore. I just wanted to be honest. I'm scared, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper, of what this town would do if they knew who I really am. Mateo's hand brushed mine, a fleeting touch that sent a jolt through me. You don't have to do it alone, he said. Not if you don't want to. I looked at him, my heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. The world felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for me to decide. And for the first time in years, I let myself choose what I wanted, not what was safe. I leaned in, and when our lips met, it was like the lake, the sky, the whole damn world fell away. That kiss changed everything. It was soft, hesitant at first, then urgent, like we'd both been starving for it. When we pulled apart, Mateo's eyes were wide, his breath uneven. "Jamal," he whispered, and my name in his voice felt like a promise. But promises don't survive in a town like Whitefish. Not when you're a black man and a Latino sheriff stealing moments in the shadows. We kept it quiet, meeting at the lake or in his truck on back roads, where no one would see. Every touch, every glance was a rebellion against the world we lived in, and it was exhilarating until it wasn't. One night, we were at a dive bar on the edge of town, a place where no one knew us, or so we thought. We'd been careful, sitting at opposite ends of the counter, trading smiles when no one was looking. But as we left, a group of guys in trucker hats followed us to the parking lot. "Sheriff," one of them slurred, his voice dripping with venom. "Didn't know you swung that way." Mateo stiffened, his hand brushing mine as if to say, "Stay calm." "Go home, Carl," he said, his voice steady but cold. "You're drunk." Carl laughed, a cruel sound. "Oh, we're just getting started. Ain't right, you and him. People talk, you know." My blood ran cold. I'd heard those words before, felt that same weight of eyes judging, condemning. I wanted to run, but Mateo stepped forward, his presence like a shield. "Talk all you want," he said. "Doesn't change a damn thing." They backed off, muttering slurs under their breath, but the damage was done. The secret we'd guarded so carefully wasn't ours anymore. By morning, the whispers had spread. At the hardware store, customers avoided my eyes. My mom called, her voice tight with worry. "Jamal, people are saying things about you and that sheriff. Tell me it ain't true." I couldn't lie to her, but I couldn't tell the truth either. "It's nothing, Ma," I said, my throat tight. "Just rumors." But it wasn't nothing. It was everything. And when I saw Mateo that night, his face was drawn, his eyes heavy with something new. Fear, maybe, or resolve. "They're watching me," he said, his voice low. "At the station. Said I'm causing trouble." My heart sank. "Because of me?" "No," he said fiercely, grabbing my hand. "Because of them. Because they're scared of anything that doesn't fit their little box." I wanted to believe him, but the weight of the town's judgment was crushing. I'd spent my life hiding, and now that I'd finally let myself feel, it was unraveling. "What do we do?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. Mateo's jaw tightened. "We keep going. Or we leave. But whatever we do it together." His words lit something in me, a spark of hope I hadn't felt in years. But hope is a fragile thing, and the next day it shattered. I was restocking paint cans when the bell chimed, and 2 deputies walked in. Not Mateo, his colleagues, their faces hard. "Jamal Carter?" one of them said, his tone clipped. "Need you to come with us." My stomach dropped. "For what?" "Just come," the other said, his hand resting on his holster. The ride to the station was silent, the air thick with tension. When we got there, Mateo was in the lobby, his face pale. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, stepping toward me. "Back off, Alvarez," one of the deputies snapped. "This doesn't concern you." They took me to an interrogation room, the kind you see in movies, bare walls, a single table, a flickering light. The sheriff, an older man named Hargrove, sat across from me. "We got a complaint," he said, his voice flat. "Says you and Deputy Alvarez been inappropriate." My blood turned to ice. "Inappropriate how?" "Don't play dumb," Hargrove said, leaning forward. "You know what this town's like. We don't need trouble. Not from you, not from him." I wanted to scream, to tell them they were the ones causing trouble, but fear kept me quiet. All I could think of was Mateo, his job, his life, everything he'd worked for. I didn't do anything wrong, I said finally, my voice shaking. Hargrove leaned back, his eyes cold. Maybe, but you keep this up, and it's not just you who pays the price. When they let me go, Mateo was waiting outside, his fists clenched. I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking. I should have protected you. You didn't do this, I said, but the words felt hollow. The town had drawn a line, and we were on the wrong side of it. The days that followed were a tightrope walk. Mateo and I kept our distance in public, but the pull between us was stronger than ever. We met in secret, at the lake, in his truck, in the quiet corners of the world where no one could see. Each moment was a stolen breath, a defiance of the town's suffocating grip. But the whispers grew louder, and I could feel the walls closing in. One night, I found a note taped to my apartment door. Leave or else. No signature, just jagged handwriting and a threat that made my blood run cold. I didn't tell Mateo. I couldn't bear to see the guilt in his eyes again. But I started carrying a pocket knife, just in case. Whitefish had never felt safe, but now it felt like a trap. At the hardware store, Lena called from Seattle, her voice a lifeline. Jamal, you okay? She asked, her worry cutting through the static. Mom told me what's going on. I gripped the phone, my voice low. It's complicated. Complicated's one word for it, she said. You don't have to stay there, you know. You could come here. Start over. I thought about it, leaving, running, starting fresh where no one knew my name. But every time I pictured it, I saw Mateo's face, his smile, the way he made me feel like I could be whole. I can't just run, I said. Not yet. Then fight, Lena said, her voice fierce. You deserve to be happy, Jamal. Don't let them take that from you. Her words stayed with me, but fighting felt impossible when the whole town seemed to be watching. Mateo was under pressure too. Hargrove had him on desk duty, citing community concerns. I saw the toll it took, the way his shoulders slumped when he thought I wasn't looking. But he never wavered, never pulled away. We're in this together, he'd say, and I wanted to believe him. One evening we were at the lake again, the place where it all began. The water was dark, reflecting a sky heavy with clouds. Mateo sat beside me, his hand resting on mine, his thumb tracing slow circles. I've been thinking, he said, his voice quiet, about leaving, not just Whitefish but Montana, starting somewhere new. With you. My heart leapt, then sank. Leaving meant freedom, but it also meant abandoning everything I'd known. My mom, my home, the life I'd built, flawed as it was. You'd give up being sheriff? I asked. For you? Yeah. He looked at me, his eyes steady. But only if you're ready. I wasn't sure what I was ready for, but the thought of a life with him, open, honest, free, was a dream I couldn't let go of. Before I could answer, headlights flashed in the distance. My stomach twisted as a truck pulled up, the same one I'd seen in the bar parking lot. Carl and his buddies stepped out, their faces shadowed but their intent clear. Stay behind me, Mateo whispered, standing up. His hand went to his side, where his gun would have been if he weren't off duty. Well, look at this, Carl sneered, stepping closer. Sheriff and his boyfriend, all cozy. Walk away, Carl, Mateo said, his voice like steel. You don't want this. But Carl didn't walk away. He lunged, and everything happened too fast. Fists flying, shouts echoing, the crack of bone against bone. I threw myself into the fray, my pocket knife forgotten in my panic. Mateo was a blur of motion, holding his own until a second guy grabbed him from behind. I tackled the man, my heart pounding, fear and rage burning through me. By the time it was over, Carl and his friends were limping back to their truck, cursing under their breath. Mateo had a split lip, and my knuckles were bloody, but we were standing. He grabbed my face, his hands shaking. "You okay?" I nodded, my chest heaving. "You?" He pulled me into a hug, fierce and desperate, and for a moment the world was just us. But the weight of what had happened settled in. This wasn't just a fight, it was a warning. The town wouldn't let us be. "We can't stay," I said, my voice breaking. "Not like this." Mateo nodded, his jaw tight. "Then we go. Together." Leaving wasn't as simple as packing a bag. It was tearing up roots, facing my mom's tears, and walking away from a life I'd spent years trying to fit into. But as I stood in my apartment, stuffing clothes into a duffel, Mateo's hand on my shoulder felt like the only thing keeping me grounded. "We'll figure it out," he said, and for the first time I believed him. Telling my mom was the hardest part. I sat her down in her small kitchen, the smell of her famous cornbread filling the air. Her eyes were already wet before I said a word. "Ma, I'm leaving," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. "I can't stay here. Not anymore." She reached for my hand, her grip tight. "Is it because of that sheriff? The things people are saying?" "It's because of me," I said, the truth spilling out. "I'm queer, Ma. I love him, and I can't keep pretending I don't." She was quiet for a long time, her face a mix of pain and love. "I just want you safe," she whispered. "Happy." "I will be," I said, hoping it was true. When she hugged me, it felt like a goodbye and a beginning all at once. Mateo and I decided on Seattle. Lena had offered her couch, and the city felt like a place where we could breathe. But before we left, there was one last thing we had to do. We went back to Lake McDonald, the place where it all started. The water was still, the air cool with the promise of autumn. We stood on the dock, our hands intertwined, no longer hiding. "I was scared as hell that first night," Mateo admitted, his voice soft. "Seeing you out here, looking so lost. I wanted to know you. I didn't expect to fall for you." I laughed, my heart full. "I didn't expect any of this. But I'm glad you pulled up." He kissed me then, slow and sure, and it felt like a vow. The town, the threats, the weight of it all faded, leaving just us and the lake and the future we'd chosen. Seattle was a shock of color and noise after Whitefish's quiet. Lena welcomed us with open arms, her apartment small but warm. Mateo found work as a security consultant, his sheriff days behind him but his strength still there. I got a job at a mechanic shop, my hands busy with engines instead of fishing rods. We were starting over, building something new. But the past didn't let go easily. A month after we moved, I got a letter from my mom, forwarded from Whitefish. Inside was a newspaper clipping. Carl and his buddies had been arrested for assaulting another couple in town. The article mentioned Mateo, how his time as sheriff had pushed for change, even if it cost him. I showed it to him, my chest tight with pride and pain. "They're learning," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "Slowly." We weren't naive. Seattle had its own challenges, its own prejudices. But here we could walk down the street holding hands, could kiss without looking over our shoulders. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. One evening we went to a lake outside the city, a new place for new memories. As we sat by the water, Mateo pulled out a small box. Inside was a simple silver ring, glinting in the fading light. "I don't care where we are," he said, his voice thick with emotion. As long as I'm with you. I said yes before he could finish, my heart too full for words. We weren't just surviving anymore, we were living. And as I looked at him, the man who'd changed my life forever, I knew that no matter what came next, we'd face it together. The lake stretched out before us, a new mirror for a new life. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of what it reflected.